Thousands of years ago, beneath a sky so clear it felt like you could reach up and touch the stars, ancient civilizations looked to the heavens and saw far more than just scattered lights. They saw gods, heroes, and cosmic battles playing out in the darkness, stories that shaped their world in ways we're only beginning to understand. Picture this: a Babylonian priest tracing the path of Venus, not just as a bright dot in the sky, but as a celestial messenger foretelling the fate of kings. Or a Maya astronomer calculating the movements of planets with such precision that their calendars still astonish us today. These weren't just myths or superstitions. They were the foundation of entire cultures, guiding everything from the planting of crops to the construction of temples that aligned with the stars. What if I told you that the constellations we casually point out today were once the centerpieces of epic tales, passed down through generations? The Greeks saw Orion as a mighty hunter, forever chasing the Pleiades across the sky, while the Navajo wove the same stars into stories of creation and balance. The night sky was humanity's first storybook, a canvas where every culture painted its own understanding of life, death, and the forces beyond our control. But here's the fascinating part. Many of these ancient observations weren't just poetic, they were startlingly accurate. The Dogon people of West Africa, for example, knew about the existence of Sirius B, a star invisible to the naked eye, centuries before modern telescopes confirmed it. How did they know? That's just one of the mysteries we'll unravel together. This journey isn't just about stargazing. It's about rediscovering a time when the cosmos was alive with meaning. Imagine walking the streets of ancient Tenochtitlan, where the Aztecs built their city to mirror the heavens, or standing atop an Egyptian pyramid, its sides perfectly aligned with the cardinal points of the sky. These weren't random choices, they were acts of reverence, a way to anchor human life to the rhythms of the universe. By the time we're done, you'll never look at the night sky the same way again. Because hidden in these age-old stories are echoes of our shared human curiosity, the same wonder that drives us to explore space today. So let's step back in time and see the stars through the eyes of those who first dared to dream about them. To understand how deeply the stars shaped human civilization, let's start with the Greeks, who turned the night sky into a stage for their most epic myths. Orion, the hunter, wasn't just a cluster of stars, he was a giant striding across the heavens, his belt gleaming as he pursued the seven sisters of the Pleiades. But look east to ancient China, and you'd find a completely different sky. There, constellations formed a celestial bureaucracy, with stars representing emperors, ministers, and even courthouses in the sky. This wasn't just imagination at work, it was a way to mirror the order of their society in the cosmos itself. Now, picture a Polynesian voyager standing on the deck of a canoe, steering across the open Pacific with nothing but the stars as a guide. For them, the heavens were a roadmap. They memorized the rising and setting points of key stars, using them like street signs to navigate thousands of miles of open ocean. The star path known as T-Lopa, a flickering light beneath the horizon, was said to lead directly to land. This wasn't mythology, it was precise, life-saving science passed down through generations. Even more astonishing, these star maps were more than just practical tools. They were living stories, evolving with each culture that gazed upward. The Aboriginal people of Australia saw the dark patches of the Milky Way not as empty space, but as celestial rivers and emu tracks. The Inca spotted a llama in the stars, its outline formed by the dark dust lanes of our galaxy. Every civilization projected its own world view onto the cosmos, turning the night sky into a mirror of their fears, hopes, and understanding of the universe. What's remarkable is how these ancient star watchers noticed details modern astronomers would later confirm. The Babylonians recorded the movements of Jupiter with such accuracy that their observations still hold up today. And the Maya calculated the cycles of Venus to within a few hours over a span of 500 years. These weren't just lucky guesses, they were the result of meticulous, generations-long study. The stars weren't just decoration to these cultures, they were the heartbeat of time itself, dictating when to plant crops, when to hold ceremonies, even when to go to war. So when we look up at the same constellations today, we're not just seeing stars, we're seeing the echoes of countless human stories, each one a testament to our unshakable desire to find meaning in the vast, glittering dark. And that brings us to the oldest star myths ever recorded, tales so ancient they predate writing itself. The Babylonians didn't just watch the stars, they turned the night sky into a library. Imagine clay tablets etched with careful cuneiform script, recording the dance of planets like Venus across the heavens. For them, every flicker of light held meaning. When Venus appeared as the morning star, it was the goddess Ishtar heralding victory in battle. When it vanished, she descended into the underworld, signaling a time of caution. These weren't random guesses, they were precise predictions honed over centuries of observation. The famous Venus tablets of Amasajuka, dating back to the 17th century BCE, track the planet's cycles with astonishing accuracy, proving the Babylonians weren't just storytellers, they were some of history's first scientists. But their genius didn't stop there. Look up at the zodiac today and you're seeing a Babylonian invention. They sliced the sky into 12 equal slices, each named after constellations that marked the sun's path through the year. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, these weren't just pretty pictures. They were a cosmic clock, helping farmers time their harvests and kings plan their reigns. Even their math was ahead of its time. Using a base 60 system, they calculated celestial events with a precision that would make modern astronomers nod in respect. That's why we still divide hours into 60 minutes and circles into 360 degrees. Their legacy is literally written in the stars. Now shift your gaze south to the banks of the Nile, where the Egyptians wove the heavens into the very fabric of their faith. For them, the sky wasn't just a map, it was a mirror of the divine. The god Osiris, ruler of the afterlife, was embodied by the constellation we call Orion, while Sirius, the brightest star, signaled the annual flooding of the Nile, a life-giving event tied to the goddess Sopdet. Their pyramids weren't just tombs, they were gateways to the cosmos, aligned so perfectly with the cardinal directions that even today, engineers marvel at their accuracy. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, points to true north with a margin of error so slim it rivals modern instruments. What's truly remarkable is how these two cultures, separated by deserts and centuries, shared a common thread. The stars weren't distant specks of light, but active characters in the drama of human life. The Babylonians saw omens, the Egyptians saw gods. Both crafted a celestial language so powerful it shaped empires. And when we trace the roots of modern astronomy, we're standing on the shoulders of these ancient sky watchers, people who looked up and dared to decode the universe. For the ancient Egyptians, the night sky wasn't just a spectacle, it was a reflection of their entire world. The Milky Way stretched above them like a celestial twin of the Nile, its shimmering band mirroring the life-giving river that carved through their land. When Sirius, the brightest star, rose just before dawn in mid-July, it wasn't merely an astronomical event. It was Sopdet, the goddess who heralded the annual flood, her appearance signaling the waters would soon rise, nourishing the fields and ensuring another year of abundance. This connection between heaven and earth was so profound that their calendar revolved around it, dividing the year into 3 seasons tied to the Nile cycles: inundation, growth, and harvest. But the stars held even deeper meaning. Look at Orion, and you'd see Osiris, the god of resurrection, his belt gleaming as a symbol of eternal life. The constellation's position in the sky mirrored the pharaoh's journey after death. Just as Osiris triumphed over death, so too would the ruler's soul ascend to join the gods. This belief wasn't poetic metaphor, it was etched into stone. The pyramids of Giza, aligned with uncanny precision to the cardinal directions, served as cosmic launch pads. Their narrow air shafts pointed directly at Orion's belt and Sirius, creating a pathway for the pharaoh's spirit to traverse the heavens. Even the Great Sphinx, gazing eastward, may have been designed to face the rising sun on the spring equinox, a symbol of rebirth and divine order. The sun god Ra's daily voyage was another act of celestial symmetry. By day, he sailed across the sky in his solar bark. By night, he traveled through the underworld, battling chaos to rise again at dawn. This cycle wasn't just a myth, it was a template for Egyptian life, reinforcing the idea that order must constantly triumph over disorder. Temples like Karnak were built so sunlight would pierce their inner sanctuaries on solstices, illuminating statues of the gods as if confirming their presence. Every pillar, every hieroglyph, every ritual tied the earthly to the eternal. What's astonishing is how these astronomical alignments weren't approximate guesses. The Egyptians tracked stars with instruments like the Merkit, a simple yet effective tool that used plumb lines to measure the positions of constellations. Their observations were so meticulous that they corrected their calendar over centuries, recognizing that the solar year wasn't exactly 365 days. This wasn't just religion, it was science in service of survival, blending precision with profound spiritual meaning. When the Greeks later inherited these ideas, they didn't just adopt Egyptian astronomy, they transformed it. But that's a story for another moment. For now, picture standing in the shadow of a pyramid at dawn, watching Sirius fade as Ra's boat crests the horizon. To the Egyptians, this wasn't just sunrise. It was the universe whispering that life, death, and the Nile itself would forever turn in harmony. The Greeks didn't just name the stars, they filled the heavens with drama. Every constellation told a story, like Hercules wrestling the Nemean lion in the sky or Perseus swooping down to rescue Andromeda from the sea monster Cetus. Even the Milky Way had a mythic origin, spilled drops of milk from the goddess Hera as she nursed the infant Heracles. But these tales weren't just entertainment, they were a way to make sense of the cosmos. When an eclipse darkened the sun, it wasn't a mere shadow. It was Apollo's chariot veering off course or a divine omen foretelling a king's downfall. The Greeks saw the universe as a stage, and the stars were the actors. Take the word planet, derived from their term planetes, meaning wanderer. To the Greeks, Mars and Venus weren't just dots of light, they were celestial nomads, drifting against the fixed backdrop of stars. Philosophers like Ptolemy mapped their paths with intricate models, laying the groundwork for astronomy as we know it. His work, the Almagest, catalogued over 1,000 stars, many still bearing the names he gave them. Yet even as they studied the heavens with scientific precision, the myths endured. The constellation Aquila wasn't just an eagle, it was Zeus's loyal messenger, sent to retrieve the lightning bolts that shook the earth. Now cross the Atlantic to where the Maya watched those same wandering planets with equal fascination. To them, Venus wasn't Aphrodite's jewel, it was Kukulkan's fiery spear, a harbinger of war. They tracked its cycles with such precision that their priests could predict its appearances centuries in advance, timing battles and ceremonies to its celestial rhythm. The Pleiades, known to the Greeks as Seven Sisters, were seen by the Maya as the rattles of a cosmic serpent, their rising marking the start of the planting season. Meanwhile, the Inca gazed at the same dark patches of the Milky Way and saw not a spilled cup of milk, but a celestial river flowing with the spirits of their ancestors. They called it Mayu, and its path mirrored the life-giving Urubamba River below. Where the Greeks spotted Orion's belt, the Inca saw a trio of llamas eternally grazing in the sky. These interpretations weren't just imaginative, they were woven into the fabric of daily life, guiding agriculture, architecture, and even empire building. What's striking is how these cultures, continents apart, shared a common instinct to look up and see stories in the stars. The Greeks painted their gods across the night. The Maya etched celestial cycles into stone temples. The Inca aligned their cities with the solstice sun. Each found meaning in the same cosmic canvas, proving that the sky has always been more than a void. It's humanity's oldest mirror. Deep in the jungles of Mesoamerica, the Maya turned the night sky into a sacred clockwork. Their astronomers perched atop pyramid temples like El Caracol, a spiraling stone observatory with narrow windows perfectly aligned to Venus's path, didn't just watch the stars, they conversed with them. To the Maya, Venus wasn't merely a bright light, it was Kukulkan's fiery eye, a god whose movements dictated the rhythm of war. Their Dresden Codex, a fragile bark paper book surviving centuries of humidity, contains precise Venus tables predicting its appearances 50 years in advance. Imagine a civilization so attuned to the cosmos that they'd delay battles for years, waiting for the moment when Venus rose as the morning star, signaling divine favor. But their genius didn't stop there. The long count calendar, often misunderstood as a doomsday prophecy for 2012, was actually a masterpiece of celestial engineering. Spanning over 5,000 years, it wasn't forecasting an apocalypse, it was marking time in grand cycles, like a cosmic odometer rolling over. The Maya calculated a solar year at 365.242 days, just 17 seconds off modern measurements. They even tracked the wobble of the moon's orbit, predicting eclipses with tables so accurate they're still referenced today. What's truly breathtaking is how they wove this precision into everyday life. Corn planting aligned with the Pleiades' first dawn appearance. Temple staircases counted the days between solstices. In Palenque, a ruler named Pakal was entombed beneath a pyramid designed so the winter solstice sun would illuminate his sarcophagus, as if the heavens themselves honored his passage to the underworld. This wasn't just astronomy, it was a dialogue between earth and sky, where every celestial event held meaning. Now, let's journey south to the Andes, where the Inca engineered an empire in harmony with the stars. High above Machu Picchu, stone pillars called Intihuatana served as solar anchors, casting no shadow at noon during the equinoxes, a literal sundial for the gods. Where the Maya tracked Venus, the Inca revered the dark constellations of the Milky Way, seeing not empty space but celestial animals guiding their crops and rituals. Their understanding of the cosmos was so precise that their capital, Cusco, was laid out in the shape of a puma, its head aligned with the rising sun on the winter solstice. The Inca didn't just observe the heavens, they built their world as a reflection of them. Terraces followed the contours of the sun's annual path, and roads stretched toward sacred peaks where priests watched the stars. Even their quipus knotted strings used for record-keeping may have encoded astronomical data, a language we're still deciphering. Where the Maya left codices, the Inca left landscapes, turning mountains and rivers into a living map of the cosmos. Both cultures, continents apart, shared a singular truth. The sky wasn't just above them, it was within them, shaping every harvest, every battle, every stone they laid. High in the Andes, where thin air makes the stars burn brighter, The Inca saw the night sky not as a scattering of lights, but as a tapestry of dark shapes woven between them. While Western astronomers traced Orion's belt or Scorpio's tail, the Inca spotted a celestial llama, its silhouette formed by the Inca dust lanes of the Milky Way. This wasn't just an animal in the stars, it was a divine guardian. They believed the llama descended to Earth each dawn to drink from the cosmic river, its thirst ensuring the waters would flow through their terraced fields. Even today, Quechua shepherds whisper prayers to this same constellation, a tradition stretching back centuries, but the Inca's celestial vision went deeper. Where others saw emptiness, they found meaning. The dark patch near the Southern Cross, that was Yakana, a cosmic mother llama whose movement across the sky dictated the breeding cycles of herds below. The sprawling Milky Way wasn't just a band of light. It was Mayu, a heavenly river mirroring the Urubamba, its currents carrying the spirits of ancestors. This profound connection between land and sky shaped everything. Temples like Coricancha in Cusco were designed so sunlight pierced specific niches during solstices, bathing golden idols of Inti, the sun god, in radiant precision. The Intihuatana stone at Machu Picchu, often called the hitching post of the sun, acted as an astronomical anchor, casting no shadow at midday during equinoxes, a literal dialogue between stone and sunlight. What's even more intriguing are the quippers, those knotted cords often dismissed as simple record-keeping tools. Recent studies suggest some may have encoded celestial data knots tracking lunar cycles or planetary positions. Imagine a civilization recording the dance of stars not with ink or parchment, but with intricate strings, their numeric patterns preserving secrets we're still unraveling. Now set sail across the vast Pacific, where Polynesian navigators used the stars not as myths but as maps. For them, the heavens weren't just stories, they were highways. Without compasses or charts, they memorized the rising and setting points of hundreds of stars, steering double-hulled canoes across thousands of miles of open ocean. The star path called T-Lapa, a flickering underwater light, was said to pulse faster as land neared, a natural phenomenon modern science still can't fully explain. Their sky wasn't just watched, it was sailed, a living compass guiding them to islands scattered like pebbles on an endless blue plain. From the llama in the Andes to the star paths of Polynesia, these cultures remind us that the night sky was never passive. It was a teacher, a clock, a compass, and above all, a mirror reflecting humanity's endless ingenuity. Picture the vast Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly in every direction, its surface meeting the sky at a horizon so distant it feels like the edge of the world. Now imagine setting sail across that expanse with no compass, no maps, just the stars overhead whispering directions. This was the reality for Polynesian wayfinders, the greatest navigators the world has ever known. They didn't just sail blindly, they memorized the rising and setting points of over 200 stars, each one a fixed beacon in the celestial dome they called Tiwanaomarama, the family of light. To them, the night sky wasn't just a spectacle, it was a compass, a calendar, and a sacred text all in one. The key to their genius lay in the star compass, a mental map dividing the horizon into 32 directional houses. Each house was marked by a specific star's rising or setting point, creating a grid as precise as any modern GPS. When the star Hokulea, what we call Arcturus, rose in the northeast, it signaled the path to Hawaii. When Sirius blazed directly overhead, it meant they'd reached the latitude of Tahiti. But here's what's breathtaking: they didn't just follow one star. As each one dipped below the horizon, they'd pivot to the next, stitching together a celestial pathway across thousands of miles of open ocean. Yet stars were only part of the story. Polynesian navigators read the ocean itself like a living map. They watch the dance of ocean swells, sensing distant islands by how waves refracted around them. They track the flight patterns of birds, the golden plover's morning departure toward land, the white tern's refusal to stray too far from shore. Even the color of the clouds held clues. A faint greenish tint might reflect a lagoon miles beyond the horizon. And then there was T-Lopa, the mysterious underwater lightning flashes of light near the ocean floor that grew brighter as land approached, a phenomenon science still can't fully explain. Their myths weren't separate from this knowledge, they encoded it. Take the legend of Moi slowing the sun. On the surface, it's a story about a trickster demigod lassoing the sun to lengthen the day. But dig deeper, and it's also a lesson in celestial mechanics. By slowing the sun's path, navigators could better gauge its position against the horizon, crucial for estimating latitude. These stories weren't just entertainment, they were mnemonics preserving complex astronomy in oral tradition across generations. What's truly humbling is the scale of their achievements. Using only this intimate knowledge of nature, Polynesians settled islands scattered across 10 million square miles of ocean, an area larger than all of Russia. From Rapa Nui's lonely statues to Aotearoa's misty peaks, their voyages connected dots of land so remote, Europe's greatest explorers wouldn't reach them for centuries. And they did it without writing a single word down, passing every star, every current, every cloud pattern from elder to apprentice in chants and stories. Now let's turn our gaze to another ancient sky-watching tradition, one that didn't navigate oceans, but instead mapped the very rhythm of life onto the stars. Indigenous Australians didn't just see constellations. They read the dark spaces between them, finding emus, kangaroos, and ancestral creators in the Inca voids of the Milky Way. Where Polynesians saw a highway, they saw a storybook written in cosmic dust. While Western stargazers connected the dots of stars to form constellations, Aboriginal Australians looked to the spaces between them, finding meaning in the darkness itself. Stretching across the Milky Way's glowing band, they traced the silhouette of an emu, its long neck and rounded body formed not by stars, but by the Inca dust lanes that blot out starlight. This wasn't just a celestial decoration, it was a seasonal clock. When the emu in the sky appeared upright in the early evening, it signaled the time to gather emu eggs, its posture mirroring the real birds nesting on the ground below. By the time it stretched horizontally at dusk months later, the eggs had hatched and hunting season began. The sky wasn't just a map to these First Nations people, it was an almanac written in cosmic ink. Their astronomical knowledge ran even deeper. In New South Wales, a rock carving known as the emu footprint aligns perfectly with the southern celestial emu during the autumn months, its contours matching the dark constellation's shape when viewed from a specific vantage point. Nearby, a stone arrangement at Wurdi mirrors the setting positions of the sun at solstices and equinoxes, its egg-like oval shape echoing the emu's seasonal cycle. These weren't accidental designs, they were deliberate, precise observatories carved into the landscape millennia before Stonehenge's slabs were raised. The stories woven around these celestial patterns reveal a sophisticated understanding of cosmic events. In Arnhem Land, eclipses weren't terrifying omens but the Sun Woman and Moon Man meeting in reconciliation. Meteor showers, those were the fiery trails of ancestral beings hurling stones across the sky. One particularly striking tale from the Yolngu people describes Barnard's Loop, a faint nebula near Orion, as the aftermath of a great celestial fire lit by the creator being Nyaruna. Modern astrophysics confirms this glowing gas cloud was indeed shaped by ancient stellar explosions. How did cultures without telescopes know these details? Through generations of patient observation, passing knowledge not in textbooks, but in songlines, oral maps that wove navigation, astronomy, and lore into rhythmic stories. What truly sets Aboriginal astronomy apart is its unbroken continuity. While Babylonian star tablets gather dust in museums, Indigenous Australians still use the same celestial knowledge today. Elder astronomers like Gilla Michael Anderson teach children to read the emu's position for seasonal cues, just as their ancestors did 65,000 years ago. In Western Australia, the Bidiadanga community predicts weather shifts by watching the Pleiades' brightness. A technique science now confirms links to atmospheric humidity. This living tradition shatters the myth that advanced astronomy requires telescopes or mathematics. The proof is etched across the continent, from the Bureaucracy fish traps aligned with star risings to mark migration seasons, to the intricate constellation stories preserved in bark paintings. Now let's leap from the red deserts of Australia to the frozen north, where the Norse saw the shimmering aurora not as particles colliding in the atmosphere, but as the gleaming armor of Valkyries riding to Valhalla. Where Aboriginal Australians found emus in the darkness, Viking poets saw celestial battlefields, their myths painting the night sky with just as much wonder and meaning. To the Norse, the shimmering curtains of the aurora weren't just light in the sky. They were the Valkyries' armor gleaming as they rode across the night, escorting fallen warriors to Odin's great hall. Picture a Viking standing on a frozen fjord, breath visible in the icy air, watching those green and crimson waves ripple overhead. In that moment, they weren't just seeing atmospheric particles colliding, they were witnessing the very bridge between worlds. The Northern Lights, or Northaljos, were thought to be reflections from the shields and spears of these warrior maidens, a celestial parade honoring the brave. Even the crackling sounds sometimes accompanying the aurora were interpreted as the clashing of weapons in distant battles beyond the clouds, but the Norse cosmos stretched far beyond the aurora's glow. At its heart stood Yggdrasil, the immense world tree, its roots digging into the underworld and its branches cradling the heavens. Stars weren't just pinpricks of light, they were the tree's fiery fruit, each one a spark from the primordial fires of creation. The gods themselves would gather beneath Yggdrasil's boughs to hold council, while the dragon Nidhugger gnawed at its roots below, a constant reminder of the fragile balance between order and chaos. This wasn't just mythology, it was a cosmic blueprint explaining everything from the seasons to the inevitability of decay and renewal. Then there was Ragnarok, the cataclysmic twilight of the gods. In this final battle, the skies themselves would shatter, stars would plummet like embers from a dying fire, and the sun and moon would be swallowed by monstrous wolves. Yet even this destruction carried a thread of hope. After the chaos, a new world would emerge, green and vibrant, with surviving gods and human descendants starting anew. The Norse didn't fear the end. They saw it as part of a grand cycle, as natural as winter giving way to spring. Their entire cosmology mirrored the harsh, unpredictable environment they inhabited, a world where survival depended on resilience, where beauty and danger danced together in the frozen dark. Now, journey from Scandinavia's icy realms to the warm river valleys of ancient India, where astronomers peered into the same night sky and saw an entirely different universe. While the Vikings wove tales of falling stars, Indian sages mapped the precise movements of planets with mathematical precision, their observations laying groundwork for astronomy that would dazzle the modern world. The contrast couldn't be starker, yet both cultures shared the same awe, the same hunger to understand the cosmos whispers. In the sacred texts of ancient India, the night sky wasn't just a backdrop, it was a meticulously organized celestial kingdom. Imagine standing beneath the vast dome of stars, where each twinkling light belonged to one of 27 lunar mansions known as nakshatras. These weren't arbitrary divisions, they were cosmic neighborhoods, each governed by a deity and pulsing with unique energy. The Rig Veda, composed over 3,000 years ago, called this the eternal wheel of the heavens, a spinning tapestry where time moved not in straight lines, but in endless cycles of creation and dissolution. Take the nakshatra Rohini, for example. Linked to the creator god Brahma, its bright red star Aldebaran was considered so auspicious that kings timed coronations to its rise. Or Ashwini, the first nakshatra, symbolized by twin horsemen carrying the elixir of immortality. Vedic astrologers still use these markers today, calculating birth charts with mathematical precision that would make modern astronomers pause. The Surya Siddhanta, an ancient Hindu text, calculated the length of a solar year to within minutes of today's measurements, all without telescopes or computers. This fusion of science and spirit reached its zenith in temples like Konark's sun chariot, where stone wheels aren't just decorative, they're a functioning sundial. Each of the 24 wheels corresponds to an hour, while the temple's 7 horses represent the days of the week. At dawn on equinoxes, sunlight pierces the entrance to illuminate the sanctum, as if the sun itself is paying homage to the divine. Even today, festivals like Makar Sankranti mark the sun's transition into Capricorn with kite-flying rituals that mirror the stars' dance above. What's extraordinary is how this celestial knowledge permeated everyday life. Farmers planted crops according to the moon's nakshatra position, believing certain stars nurtured roots while others encouraged blooms. The nakshatra Pushya, associated with nourishment, was considered ideal for harvesting medicinal herbs. This wasn't superstition, it was an intricate understanding of cosmic rhythms, where human activity synchronized with the universe's heartbeat. Now, shift your gaze eastward to Imperial China, where the heavens mirrored the emperor's court down to the last bureaucratic detail. While Hindu sages saw gods in the stars, Chinese astronomers saw ministers, generals, and even celestial prisons, a cosmic government ruling the fate of mortals below. In ancient China, the night sky wasn't just a canvas of stars, it was a mirror of the imperial court itself, complete with celestial bureaucrats, palaces, and even prisons. Imagine looking up to see the North Star, known as the Purple Forbidden Enclosure, where the celestial emperor sat enthroned, surrounded by his ministers and generals. Each star had a rank, a role, and a purpose. The planet Jupiter wasn't merely a wandering light. It was the year star, its 12-year orbit marking the cycles of time and destiny. Venus, that was the Grand White One, a harbinger of war or peace depending on its position. This wasn't poetry, it was a meticulously organized system, where the heavens governed everything from harvests to the fate of dynasties. One of their most astonishing achievements was the Dunhuang Star Atlas, a hand-painted scroll dating back to the 7th century. It's the oldest complete star chart in existence, mapping over 1,300 stars with precision that still impresses astronomers today. But what's truly remarkable is how they used these charts. Comets weren't just celestial visitors, they were broom stars, sweeping away bad omens or heralding upheaval. When a supernova blazed in the sky in 1054, Chinese astronomers recorded it in meticulous detail, noting its position near the star we now call Zeta Tauri. Today, we know that explosion left behind the Crab Nebula, a swirling remnant visible through telescopes. Their records are so accurate that modern scientists still reference them to study stellar events from a millennium ago. The Chinese zodiac's 28 lunar mansions, or Ziyu, were another stroke of genius. Unlike Western constellations, these weren't just pictures, they were a cosmic clockwork. The mansion called Horn marked the spring equinox, signaling farmers to plow their fields. Heart coincided with the summer solstice, a time for imperial rituals to ensure harmony between heaven and earth. Even the dragons in their myths were celestial timekeepers. The azure dragon of the east governed spring rains, while the black turtle of the north ruled the winter's stillness. Temples like Beijing's ancient observatory still stand as monuments to this fusion of science and myth, their bronze instruments tracking the same stars that once guided emperors. And then there's the Mid-Autumn Festival, a celebration that's endured for thousands of years. When families gather under the full moon to share mooncakes, they're honoring the legend of Chang, the moon goddess who drank the elixir of immortality and ascended to her lunar palace. The festival isn't just a folk tale. It's a living connection to an era when the moon's phases dictated the rhythm of life. From the Forbidden City's alignment with the pole star to peasant farmers reading the stars for planting cues, ancient China's celestial wisdom was as practical as it was profound. Now, let's journey from the orderly heavens of imperial China to the cliffs of Mali, where the Dogon people preserved astronomical knowledge so advanced it defies easy explanation. Their understanding of Sirius's invisible companion star, a detail modern science confirmed centuries later, raises questions that still spark debate among scholars today. Deep in the cliffs of Mali's Bandiagara escarpment, the Dogon people have guarded a celestial secret for generations, one that shouldn't have been possible to know without telescopes. Their oral traditions speak of Sirius, the brightest star in our sky, not as a solitary beacon, but as part of a cosmic dance. According to their creation myths, Sirius, or Sigi Tolo, is orbited by an invisible companion, a tiny but incredibly dense star they called Po Tolo, meaning smallest seed. Here's the staggering part. Modern astronomy confirms Sirius B, a white dwarf, exists exactly as described. It's a star so dense that a teaspoon of its material would weigh more than an elephant, locked in a 50-year orbit around its brighter sibling. The Dogon didn't just know it was there, they timed rituals to its orbital cycle, celebrating the Sigwi festival once every half-century to mark its return. How did a culture without optical instruments uncover a star invisible to the naked eye? Some suggest contact with advanced civilizations, pointing to Dogon legends of amphibious beings called Nomo, who descended from the sky bearing knowledge. Others argue it's a case of modern contamination, that early 20th century astronomers might have shared their discoveries with the Dogon, who then wove them into existing traditions. But the evidence is tangled. French anthropologist Marcel Grioul recorded these stories in the 1930s, decades before Sirius B's orbital details were common knowledge. The Dogon also described Saturn's rings and Jupiter's moons, celestial features equally impossible to see without aid. What's undeniable is the sophistication of their cosmology. The Dogon saw the universe as a living, breathing entity with stars like grains in a spiraling celestial granary. Their understanding wasn't just scientific, it was deeply spiritual. Po Tolo wasn't merely a star, it was the seed of creation, the source of all matter. The Nomo, whether myth or memory, represented a bridge between heaven and earth, much like the Venus gods of the Maya or the cosmic messengers of Babylonian lore. This mystery raises a profound question. How much astronomical knowledge might other oral traditions hold, unrecorded in books but preserved in stories? The Dogon remind us that ancient sky watchers didn't just observe, they listened, passing down insights through generations with a precision we're only beginning to appreciate. Now, let's cross the Atlantic to where Native American cultures read the stars not as distant lights, but as ancestors breathing life into the world. The Lakota's Witch Hopi Oyank, the sacred hoop of the world, wasn't just a constellation. It was the cosmic blueprint for their tipis, their ceremonies, even the shape of their communities. For them, as for the Dogon, the sky was never silent. It was a story waiting to be told. To the Lakota, a meteor streaking across the night sky wasn't just a fleeting spark, it was a divine messenger. Their oral traditions tell of Tahonchon, the white buffalo calf woman, descending from the heavens as a falling star to deliver the sacred Chanunpa, or peace pipe. This wasn't merely a gift, it was a covenant binding the earth and sky into one sacred hoop. Every part of the pipe held cosmic meaning. The bowl carved from red stone represented the earth, the wooden stem reaching upward mirrored the axis of the world, and the smoke itself carried prayers to the star people. When the Lakota smoked this pipe, they weren't just performing a ritual, they were reenacting the moment the cosmos touched the plains, a reminder that the celestial and terrestrial were never truly separate. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles to the southeast, the Pawnee sculpted their entire world into a reflection of the stars. Their earth lodges weren't just homes, they were miniature universes. The circular floor symbolized the earth, the domed roof arched like the sky, and the central fire pit echoed the sun's life-giving power. But the true marvel lay overhead smoke holes aligned with specific stars, turning each lodge into an observatory. When the morning star, which they called Pa, rose through the eastern opening, it signaled the time to plant corn. The Pawnee didn't just watch these stars, they lived by them, naming clans after constellations and painting celestial maps on buffalo hides. To them, the Milky Way was the path of souls, where the spirits of the dead traveled to join their ancestors in the sky. What set these traditions apart was their view of the cosmos as alive. Where Western astronomy saw inert balls of gas, native cultures saw relatives. The Cherokee called the Pleiades Anatsatsa, the 7 boys who danced their way into the sky. The Navajo spoke of Yukesdahi, the revolving man who turned the constellations like a great celestial spindle. These weren't metaphors, they were explanations of a universe where every rock, tree, and star possessed consciousness. Even celestial events held moral weight. When the Lakota witnessed a meteor shower, they saw the Wakinyan, or thunder beings, cleansing the world, a solar eclipse. That was the sun being swallowed by an invisible spirit, a warning to restore balance to the community. This wisdom wasn't just spiritual, it was profoundly practical. The Zuni Pueblo's Shalako ceremony, timed to the winter solstice, wasn't merely a celebration, it marked the sun's rebirth, a cue to prepare for the planting season. The Hopi's Pawamu festival, aligned with the Pleiades' zenith, signaled the sprouting of ceremonial bean plants, a living barometer for spring rains. These cultures didn't need written almanacs, their ceremonies were celestial clocks, their stories encoded with generations of ecological knowledge. Now, consider the impact when these cosmic worldviews collided with European astronomy. In 1833, the Leonid meteor storm lit up Native American skies the same night settlers panicked, believing the end times had come. Where colonists saw omens, the Lakota recognized familiar celestial visitors. This clash of perspectives reveals a deeper truth. The stars have never been silent. They speak in the language of the cultures who watch them, whispering stories of creation, morality, and survival. And as we'll see next, these celestial messages didn't just shape myths, they altered the course of empires, guiding explorers, inspiring revolutions, and even deciding the fate of nations. Long before clocks or calendars, the stars were humanity's first timekeepers, their steady rhythms marking the passage of days, seasons, and even lifetimes. Picture a Babylonian priest on a ziggurat steps, tracking the slow creep of shadows as Sirius rose just before dawn. a signal that the annual floods would soon sweep down the Tigris. Or an Egyptian scribe noting how the heliacal rising of Orion's belt coincided with the Nile's life-giving surge. These weren't just observations, they were the heartbeat of civilization itself, dictating when to plant, when to harvest, when to pray. The Maya took celestial timekeeping to breathtaking heights. Their long count calendar didn't just measure years, it spanned epochs, with each cycle lasting over 5,000 years. But their true masterpiece was the Venus table in the Dresden Codex, predicting the planet's appearances with an error margin of just 2 hours per century. Imagine a civilization so attuned to the cosmos that they could forecast Venus's dance across the sky 500 years into the future, all without telescopes or computers. Their temples doubled as observatories. El Caracol's narrow windows aligned perfectly with Venus's extreme positions, turning stone into a celestial clock. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Stonehenge's towering slabs captured the solstice sun with eerie precision. On midsummer's dawn, sunlight pierces the heel stone to flood the central altar, a phenomenon that drew Neolithic pilgrims millennia before the pyramids were built. But here's what's astonishing. Recent studies suggest its smaller, blue stones may have marked lunar standstills, rare events when the moon pauses at its northernmost and southernmost points in an 18.6-year cycle. This wasn't just a calendar, it was a monument to celestial patience, where generations of watchers passed down knowledge of rhythms longer than a human lifetime. The Polynesians, though, mastered timekeeping without stone circles or codices. Their star compass divided the horizon into 32 houses, each corresponding to a star's rising or setting point. When the Pleiades known as Macaulay appeared at dusk in November, it signaled the start of Makahiki, a 4-month festival of peace and harvest. They didn't need written records. Their chants preserved celestial data with pinpoint accuracy, like the Cumulippo's 2,000 lines mapping the connections between stars and seasons. What unites these traditions is their reverence for the sky's reliability. While eclipses were terrifying disruptions, the steady march of constellations offered comfort, a promise that the universe kept time with unwavering precision. From Babylon's shadow clocks to the Inca's Intihuatana stones, humanity's earliest clocks weren't devices but constellations, their movements etched into temple walls and oral traditions. Even today, when we glance at our watches, we're following in the footsteps of those ancient sky watchers who first taught us to read time in the stars' silent language. Standing on the windswept plains of Salisbury, it's hard not to feel the weight of centuries pressing down as you watch the summer solstice sun rise perfectly between Stonehenge's towering sarcens. But this ancient marvel isn't alone across the globe. From the jungles of Cambodia to the deserts of Egypt, our ancestors carved their understanding of the cosmos into stone. Take Angkor Wat, its sprawling temple complex designed as a mirror of the heavens. The central towers align with the Draco constellation during the spring equinox, while the causeways frame the rising sun on the summer solstice like celestial gateways. These weren't just buildings, they were 3-dimensional star maps, their every angle whispering secrets of the sky. What's truly staggering is the precision. At Newgrange in Ireland, a 5,000-year-old passage tomb captures the winter solstice sunrise so perfectly that for 17 minutes, a narrow beam of light creeps along the floor to illuminate an inner chamber, a phenomenon that would have required generations of observation to engineer. Meanwhile, in Choco Canyon, the ancestral Pueblones carved spiral petroglyphs that transform into daggers of light during solstices, their shadows slicing through the stone like celestial clock hands. These sites weren't just marking time, they were weaving it into the landscape itself, turning rock and earth into a dialogue with the universe. the obsession with celestial cycles wasn't just practical, it was spiritual. At Karnak, the great temple of Amun-Ra was oriented so the rising midwinter sun flooded its inner sanctum, bathing the statue of the sun god in golden light as if renewing his power. In Mesoamerica, the pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza becomes a serpent slithering down the stairs during equinoxes, a fusion of architecture and astronomy so precise it still draws thousands of witnesses today. These monuments reveal something profound. To ancient cultures, time wasn't an abstract concept measured in minutes, but a sacred rhythm written in stone and stars. Now shift your gaze from earthly temples to the wanderers of the sky, the planets that captivated every civilization. Where modern astronomers see celestial bodies governed by gravity, our ancestors saw gods riding chariots, warriors clashing in cosmic battles, and omens foretelling the rise and fall of kings. The blood-red hue of Mars wasn't just iron oxide on its surface. To the Babylonians, it was Nergal, the god of war and pestilence, striding across the night. Venus, that shimmering evening star, transformed into Quetzalcoatl for the Aztecs, a feathered serpent descending to bring wisdom, while the Greeks saw Aphrodite's jewel dangling from the celestial vault. What made these wandering stars so fascinating was their unpredictability. Unlike the fixed constellations, planets would slow down, reverse course, or vanish for months, behaviors that demanded explanation. The Maya tracked these retrograde motions with astonishing accuracy, recording Venus's 8-year cycle in tables so precise they're still referenced by astronomers. In India, the planet Rahu was said to swallow the sun during eclipses, his decapitated head forever chasing it across the sky. These stories weren't just myths, they were attempts to rationalize the cosmos, to find patterns in the chaos. Perhaps no planet held more sway than Jupiter, the king of the Roman gods and the largest orb in our solar system. Chinese astronomers called it the Year Star, its 12-year orbit mirroring their zodiac. The Norse saw it as Thor's fiery chariot streaking across the heavens, while the Babylonians linked its movements to the fates of empires. When Galileo first glimpsed Jupiter's moons in 1610, he wasn't just discovering celestial bodies, he was unwittingly resurrecting an ancient conversation about the planet's mysteries, one that began millennia earlier when the first stargazers squinted at the sky and saw not random lights, but a story waiting to be told. When the swift-moving dot of Mercury traced its erratic path across the night sky, ancient civilizations didn't just see a planet, they saw Hermes, the winged messenger of the Greek gods, darting between realms with divine urgency. To the Romans, this same celestial traveler became Mercury, patron of commerce and thieves, his speed mirroring the planet's rapid orbit around the sun. Even now, his legacy lingers in our Wednesday, Mercredi in French, miércoles in Spanish, a linguistic fossil preserving the bond between celestial motion and human storytelling. Venus, that shimmering jewel of dawn and dusk, wore even more masks across cultures. The Greeks draped her in Aphrodite's grace, a celestial embodiment of love and beauty, while the Babylonians saw Ishtar, a warrior goddess whose morning appearances heralded victory and whose disappearances warned of upheaval. The Maya tracked her cycles with precision, timing battles to her reappearance as the morning star, when Kukulkan's feathered serpent would descend with promises of conquest. Today, her name still whispers through Friday, Freitag in German, tied to Freya, the Norse goddess of passion and fertility. Then there's Mars, the blood-red wanderer that stirred both awe and dread. The Greeks named it after Ares, the tempestuous god of war, while the Romans elevated it to Mars, a disciplined strategist whose month, March, marked the start of the campaigning season. In Hindu astrology, Mars became Mangala, a fiery omen of courage and conflict. his crimson glow believed to influence everything from marital harmony to battlefield outcomes. Even now, Tuesday carries his echo, mardi in French, Mars in Spanish, each syllable a remnant of when the planet's movements were thought to sway human destiny. Jupiter's regal presence demanded reverence. As Zeus to the Greeks and Jupiter to the Romans, this gas giant ruled the pantheon from its throne in the sky, its slow, steady movements mirroring the deliberation of a sovereign. The Norse saw Thor's chariot in its storm-streaked bands, while Chinese astronomers dubbed it the Year Star, its 12-year orbit structuring their zodiac. Thursday, or Judy, still bears the stamp of Jupiter's thunderous authority, a linguistic thread tying us to an era when planets were thought to govern mortal affairs. Saturn, the slowest visible planet, became synonymous with time itself. The Greeks associated it with Cronus, the Titan who devoured his children, while the Romans linked it to Saturn, god of agriculture and the Golden Age. Its languid orbit, taking nearly 30 years to circle the Sun, made it a celestial timekeeper, its rings invisible to ancient eyes yet symbolizing the cyclical nature of seasons. Saturday preserves this legacy, a day once sacred to Saturn's patronage, when boundaries between the mundane and the divine were believed to blur. But beyond these familiar planets lay celestial visitors that shattered the predictable rhythms of the night comets. Unlike the steady wanderers, these icy travelers appeared without warning, their fiery tails slicing through constellations like swords. To the Chinese, they were broom stars, sweeping away old regimes. To medieval Europe, harbingers of plague and divine wrath. When Halley's comet blazed across the sky in 1066, the Normans saw it as a blessing for William the Conqueror's invasion, while the Anglo-Saxons interpreted it as an omen of their doom. These icy nomads didn't just inspire fear, they wove themselves into the fabric of history, their sudden appearances rewriting human destinies under the gaze of a watchful cosmos. Comets didn't just streak across the sky, they tore through human history, leaving trails of fear and fascination in their wake. When Halley's comet blazed into view in 1066, its fiery tail stretched like a celestial sword over England. To William the Conqueror's forces, it was a divine endorsement of their invasion, a glittering banner unfurled by the heavens themselves. But for King Harold and the Anglo-Saxons, that same light was a death knell, a portent of defeat at Hastings just months later. This duality captures the paradox of comets. Were they messengers of doom or catalysts of change? The Chinese called them broom stars, sweeping away old regimes to make way for the new. Court astronomers meticulously recorded each appearance, linking them to everything from droughts to dynastic collapses. One particularly vivid account describes a comet from 44 BC as a ghostly lance piercing the night, coinciding with the assassination of Emperor Wu. Meanwhile, in medieval Europe, comets became harbingers of plague and divine wrath. When Halley's comet returned in 1456, its arrival overlapped with the outbreak of the Black Death, cementing its reputation as a bringer of calamity. Even the Bayeux Tapestry immortalized the 1066 comet as a flaming omen, its threads weaving celestial terror into the fabric of history. Yet not all cultures trembled at these visitors. The Inca saw comets as the tears of the moon goddess Mama Quilla, weeping for earthly sorrows. Native Hawaiian traditions interpreted their streaks as the fiery canoes of ancestral spirits, crossing the void between worlds. This contrast reveals a profound truth. Comets didn't carry inherent meaning, they became mirrors for human hopes and fears, reflecting back whatever the observer projected onto them. Fast forward to 1910, when Halley's comet made its most infamous modern appearance. As Earth passed through its tail, charlatans sold comet pills, to ward off poison from cyanogen gas, a real compound detected in the comet's haze. Newspapers stoked panic, while astronomers like Camille Flammarion scrambled to reassure the public. The hysteria proved groundless, but the episode exposed how deeply these celestial nomads still unsettle us. Today, we know comets as icy relics from the solar system's birth, yet their passage still ignites something primal. When Hale-Bopp lit up the sky in 1997, it didn't just dazzle scientists, it inspired cults, art, and even suicides, proving that ancient awe still burns bright. This tension between myth and science brings us to astrology's enduring grip on the human imagination. Long before telescopes sliced through the cosmic dark, our ancestors charted destinies in the stars' shifting patterns, turning planetary motions into personal prophecies. From Babylonian omen tablets to modern horoscopes, the allure remains unchanged. In a chaotic universe, we crave signs that the heavens are whispering our names. The Babylonians didn't just watch the stars, they turned them into a language of destiny. Picture a priest in the temple of Enlil, crouched over a clay tablet by flickering torchlight, etching the precise positions of Jupiter and Venus at the moment of a prince's birth. To them, these celestial arrangements weren't random. They were divine blueprints, mapping out everything from royal fortunes to the best days for planting barley. The earliest horoscopes, dating back to the 5th century BC, weren't the vague personality quizzes of today. They were precise celestial reports, linking planetary motions to floods, rebellions, even the lifespan of kings. When Mars hovered near Scorpio, it signaled war. When Venus danced with the moon, love and prosperity would follow. This wasn't superstition, it was statecraft, with the heavens consulted like a cosmic cabinet of advisors. Then came the Greeks, who took this celestial code and wove it into the fabric of human identity. By the time Alexander the Great's empire stretched from Egypt to India, Babylonian star lore had merged with Greek philosophy, birthing the zodiac as we know it. Suddenly, the sky wasn't just predicting events, it was defining personalities. Aries wasn't merely a ram-shaped cluster of stars, it embodied boldness and fire. Libra's scales represented balance and justice. The mathematician Ptolemy, better known for his astronomical treatises, penned the Tetrabiblos, a 4-volume manual that codified how planetary alignments at birth could shape everything from temperament to career paths. His work became astrology's Bible, its influence stretching from medieval Europe to the Islamic Golden Age. What's fascinating is how these ancient systems blurred the line between science and spirituality. In Babylon, astrology and astronomy were one discipline. Priests tracked eclipses to appease gods and refine their calendars. The Greeks, too, saw no contradiction. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, insisted no doctor could properly diagnose illness without consulting a patient's natal chart. Even Galileo cast horoscopes for his Medici patrons, proving how deeply these ideas permeated intellectual circles. Yet astrology's real power lies in its adaptability. When Rome adopted the zodiac, it became a tool for emperors to legitimize their rule. Augustus minted coins with his Capricorn sign, tying his reign to cosmic order. In India, Vedic astrology intertwined with Hindu cosmology, mapping karma across lifetimes. Fast forward to today, and you'll find NASA scientists rolling their eyes while millions still check their horoscopes, proving that the desire to find meaning in the stars is as old as humanity itself. This celestial storytelling didn't just shape minds, it guided explorers across uncharted oceans. Polynesian navigators didn't need compasses because they'd memorized the star paths of their ancestors, while Arab traders relied on the Zij, astronomical tables that blended astrology with navigation math. The stars weren't just fate scribes, they were the original GPS steering humanity toward new horizons. Long before GPS satellites circled the Earth, the only compasses brave explorers had were the stars themselves. Picture a Viking longship cutting through frigid North Atlantic waves, its navigator squinting at the shimmering path of the North Star, Polaris fixed like a celestial nail above the horizon. To these seafarers, that steady point wasn't just a light in the sky, it was the pivot around which their survival revolved. They called it Lathas Jana, the guiding star, and its unchanging position meant sailors could always find true north, even when storm clouds swallowed every other landmark. Meanwhile, thousands of miles to the south, Polynesian voyagers were mastering an even more astonishing feat of celestial navigation. Without compasses or written charts, they memorized the rising and setting positions of hundreds of stars, creating mental maps so precise they could pinpoint tiny islands across millions of square miles of open ocean. Their star compass divided the horizon into 32 directional houses, each marked by a specific celestial body. When the star Hoculaire Hour Arcturus rose just east of north, it signaled the path to Hawaii. When Sirius shone directly overhead, they knew they'd reached Tahiti's latitude. This wasn't guesswork, it was science refined over generations, passed down in chants that encoded astronomical data with poetic precision. By the time European explorers like Columbus set sail, these ancient techniques had evolved into sophisticated tools. The sextant, developed in the 18th century, allowed navigators to measure the angle between the horizon and celestial bodies with razor-sharp accuracy. With nothing but this brass instrument and a nautical almanac, a ship's captain could determine their latitude to within a mile. But the real genius lay in combining these tools with centuries of accumulated knowledge. Columbus carried copies of Ptolemy's star charts, while Portuguese explorers like Vasco da Gama relied on the volta do mar, a technique using trade winds and stellar positions to cross the Atlantic in sweeping arcs rather than straight lines. What's often forgotten is how much these explorers owed to earlier cultures. The astrolabe, a handheld device for measuring star positions, was perfected by Islamic astronomers in Baghdad centuries before Europeans adopted it. Arab traders had been navigating by the stars of the Southern Cross and Canopus long before Magellan entered the Pacific. Even the Vikings likely learned some of their techniques from Sami peoples, who used the sun's reflection on ice crystals to navigate polar darkness. This celestial knowledge didn't just connect continents, it reshaped history. Without Polaris, the Viking expansion might never have reached Iceland or Greenland. Without the Polynesian star compass, the Pacific's islands might have remained isolated, and without the sextant, European empires couldn't have woven their global trade networks. The stars were the silent partners in every great voyage, their cold light guiding humanity's most daring leaps into the unknown. Yet amid all this practicality, the stars never lost their mystical allure. The same navigators who calculated latitudes by day often consulted astrologers before setting sail, blending mathematics with mythology. Columbus himself believed his voyages fulfilled biblical prophecies tied to celestial signs. This duality between precise science and profound wonder brings us to the alchemists, who saw in the stars not just guides for ships, but keys to unlocking the universe's hidden secrets. In the dim glow of candlelit workshops, medieval alchemists peered into flasks and furnaces, convinced the secrets of the universe lay hidden in the dance of metals and stars. To them, gold wasn't just a precious metal, it was the sun's earthly twin, its radiant yellow mirroring the celestial fire above. Silver, with its cool glow, belonged to the moon, while iron's unyielding strength echoed Mars' warlike energy. This wasn't mere poetry, it was a cosmic recipe book where lead could become gold if only one harnessed the right planetary alignment. The famed Emerald Tablet whispered this truth: as above, so below, a belief that the heavens and earth were locked in an endless alchemical tango. Take the case of Paracelsus, the 16th century healer who carried a sword with a hollow pommel filled with azoth, his term for the universal life force drawn from starlight. He prescribed medicines timed to planetary hours, believing a potion brewed under Venus would heal love's wounds, while one concocted under Saturn might mend broken bones. His contemporaries, like John Dee, scryed the heavens using obsidian mirrors, seeking conversations with angels who they believed dictated the stars' hidden formulas. These weren't charlatans, they were pioneers straddling the line between mysticism and proto-science, their failures paving the way for modern chemistry. The tools of their trade reveal how deeply astrology and alchemy intertwined. The Athana, a self-feeding furnace, was designed to mimic the sun's eternal heat. Its flames kept burning for months to purify metals. Alchemical manuscripts overflowed with celestial diagrams, the sun and moon often depicted as literal ingredients in recipes, their symbols scribbled beside measurements of mercury and sulfur. Even the stages of the great work, nigredo blackening, albedo whitening, citronitas yellowing, and rubedo reddening, mirrored the moon's phases, a metaphor for the soul's purification. Yet for all their mysticism, alchemists made startlingly practical discoveries. Distillation, a technique perfected in their quest for the quintessence, became foundational to chemistry. Their experiments with acids and alloys laid groundwork for metallurgy, and their insistence that all matter shared a common essence foreshadowed the periodic table. When Isaac Newton, often hailed as the father of modern physics, devoted more pages to alchemy than to calculus, it wasn't eccentricity. It was a reflection of how deeply these cosmic ideas permeated early science. What's often overlooked is how global this star-metal connection was. In China, Taoist alchemists sought the elixir of immortality by blending cinnabar, a mercury compound, with timing based on lunar cycles. The Mughal Empire's jewelers crafted talismans embedding emeralds linked to Venus in gold to harness celestial harmony. Even the Aztecs associated turquoise with the heavens, using it in rituals to channel the energy of the planet they called Citlalpal, the Great Star. This quest for cosmic gold wasn't just about wealth or eternal life. It was humanity's first systematic attempt to decode the universe's hidden patterns, to prove that the same forces guiding planets also pulsed through human veins. Though their methods seem arcane today, alchemists grasped a profound truth we're still unraveling. The elements in our bodies really were forged in distant stars. There as above, so below wasn't just a motto. It was a premonition of astrophysics, a poetic glimpse into the stellar alchemy that makes us all children of the cosmos. Long before the International Astronomical Union drew boundaries in the sky, the night was a canvas where every culture painted its own celestial stories. The Navajo saw not Orion's belt but Atsi-Atsusi, the first slender one, a hero whose outstretched arms formed a constellation guiding seasonal ceremonies. In Australia's Arnhem Land, the emu in the sky stretched across the Milky Way's dark dust lanes, its posture signaling when to gather eggs. These weren't just alternative star maps, they were living libraries encoding generations of knowledge about weather, harvests, and sacred laws. Yet today, fewer than a dozen of these indigenous systems are widely recognized, their intricate star patterns overshadowed by the IU's 88 official constellations. Take the Pawnees Pahukatawa, a cluster of stars we call the Pleiades. To them, it wasn't seven sisters but the Council of Chiefs, whose appearance marked the time for planting sacred corn. Or the Maoris' Te Waka o Tamareti, a celestial canoe formed by Scorpius, its prow pointing the way to ancestral homelands across the Pacific. These systems weren't arbitrary, they reflected intimate relationships between people and their environment. When the Lakota tracked Witch-Hopi Oyank, the Big Dipper, its movement across the sky dictated the timing of buffalo hunts and healing rituals. The loss of these systems isn't just about forgotten star names, it's a rupture in humanity's collective memory. Modern astronomy's rigid grid erases nuances like the Inca's Mayu, a dark constellation river mirroring the Yorubamba, or the Babylonian Mul, a pinned tablets that included now-discarded star groups like the Harrow and She-Goat. Even the familiar zodiac omits whole swaths of celestial lore. The Cherokee's Anatsats of Pleiades as 7 dancing boys, or the Tiswana's Dithotlwa, a giraffe-shaped asterism tracking rainy seasons. Yet there's hope in the stars themselves. Recent projects like the Indigenous Skywatchers initiative are resurrecting these celestial languages, teaching new generations to navigate by Ojibwe moon cycles or Maori star compasses. Astronomers at places like the Mauna Kea observatories now incorporate indigenous knowledge into their work, recognizing that the Maya's Venus tables or Polynesian star paths hold scientific value beyond mythology. When astrophysicists recently confirmed the accuracy of Aboriginal, emu dreaming stories about the Coalsack Nebula, a dark patch they'd linked to celestial creation for millennia, it proved these systems weren't just stories, but sophisticated observational records. This revival isn't about rejecting modern astronomy, it's about widening its lens. The same telescopes that peer into exoplanet atmospheres can also help recover lost star lore, comparing petroglyphs with stellar drift calculations to reconstruct ancient skies. As we rediscover how the Dogon tracked Sirius B, or how the Inca predicted solstices with Intihuatana stones, we're not just preserving the past, we're reclaiming ways of seeing that could inspire future discoveries. After all, the universe speaks in more languages than Greek or Latin, and its deepest secrets might yet lie hidden in the star stories we've forgotten. The Maya's celestial precision wasn't just impressive, it borders on the unbelievable. While modern astronomers rely on supercomputers and space telescopes, Maya scribes etched Venus' 584-day cycle into stone with an error margin of just 2 hours per century. That's like predicting the exact minute a candle will burn out 500 years in advance. But here's what's even more astonishing: they didn't stop at Venus. Their Dresden Codex contains tables predicting solar eclipses, lunar phases, and even the erratic movements of Mars, all calculated with a level of accuracy that would make today's astrophysicists raise an eyebrow. Then there's Aristarchus of Samos, a Greek thinker who, in the 3rd century BCE, dared to suggest something radical, that Earth wasn't the center of the universe. His heliocentric model, proposing planets revolved around the sun, was dismissed for over 1,000 years until Copernicus resurrected the idea. But Aristarchus didn't stop there. Using simple geometry and the angle of shadows during a lunar eclipse, he estimated the sun's distance from Earth to be about 20 times farther than the moon. While his numbers were off, the actual ratio is closer to 400. His method was groundbreaking. It proved ancient thinkers weren't just stargazers, they were pioneers of the scientific method, testing hypotheses with observation and math. But let's dismantle a stubborn myth, the idea that ancient astronomy was purely mystical or superstitious. The Maya didn't track Venus because they thought it was a god. They did it because its cycles were a practical calendar for war and agriculture. Their Star Wars weren't celestial battles but carefully timed military campaigns launched when Venus appeared as the morning star. Similarly, Babylonian astronomers didn't just see omens in Jupiter's movements, they recorded its position for centuries, noticing its 12-year orbit matched their zodiac cycle. These weren't priests guessing, they were scientists documenting patterns. Even more eye-opening, the Antikythera mechanism, a corroded bronze device salvaged from a 2,000-year-old shipwreck. At first glance, it looked like a lump of metal until X-rays revealed gears upon gears, a mechanical computer predicting eclipses and planetary positions with staggering precision. This wasn't just a toy, it was a portable observatory proving the ancient Greeks had mastered clockwork astronomy centuries before the Renaissance. So why does this matter? Because it rewrites history. When we dismiss ancient sky watchers as primitive, we overlook their true legacy, not just as myth makers, but as the first scientists, proving curiosity and computation transcend time. Their tools were simpler, but their minds were just as sharp, their questions just as bold, and that's a truth far more illuminating than any myth. The Nazca lines stretch across Peru's desert like a giant sketchbook, spirals, monkeys, and geometric shapes so vast they're only visible from the air. It's easy to see why some whisper about ancient astronauts guiding their creation. But here's what's far more fascinating. These intricate designs were likely made using nothing more than ropes, stakes, and generations of astronomical knowledge. The same goes for Egypt's pyramids, whose precise alignments to cardinal points and celestial events weren't gifts from extraterrestrials, but products of meticulous human observation. When you study how the ancients tracked solstice shadows or used simple tools like the Merkit to measure star angles, the real story isn't about alien intervention. It's about the staggering brilliance of early astronomers who turned dirt, stone, and patience into cosmic monuments. Take the Dogon people's knowledge of Sirius B. While theories swirl about extraterrestrial visitors revealing its existence, there's a simpler explanation. French anthropologists documented the Dogon's astronomical traditions in the 1930s, decades after European telescopes had already discovered Sirius's invisible companion. It's entirely possible this knowledge reached the Dogon through cultural exchange, not celestial beings, but reducing their sophisticated cosmology to alien influence does something insidious. It strips them of their intellectual legacy. The Dogon didn't need spaceships to craft a rich celestial mythology. They needed only the same curiosity and ingenuity that drove every culture to map the heavens. This isn't just about correcting misconceptions, it's about respecting the past. When we credit aliens for the pyramids or Nazca lines, we're implying our ancestors were incapable of such feats. Yet the evidence screams otherwise. The Maya's Venus tables, precise to within hours over centuries, weren't downloaded from a UFO. They were painstakingly recorded by priests watching the sky night after night. Stonehenge's solstice alignments weren't installed by interstellar engineers. They were calculated by Neolithic farmers tracking lunar cycles across generations. These achievements weren't miracles, they were the result of trial, error, and relentless human curiosity. What gets lost in the alien hype are the real techniques these cultures mastered. The Nazca likely used grids scaled up from smaller models, a method still employed by modern surveyors. Egyptian architects may have harnessed the autumnal equinox to align the Great Pyramid with true north, using nothing more than a shadow cast by the sun. And Polynesian navigators, their ability to sail thousands of miles by stars wasn't gifted by star visitors. It was earned through oral traditions refined over centuries of open ocean voyages. The truth is, humanity's cosmic milestones are far more inspiring when we recognize them as human milestones. Now, as we piece together these ancient astronomical legacies, a pressing question emerges. How do we protect the indigenous star knowledge that hasn't been erased or co-opted? From the Inuits' detailed understanding of Arctic celestial phenomena to the Aboriginal songlines encoding navigation in melody, These living traditions are more than history. They're unbroken threads connecting past and present. The next chapter isn't just about rediscovery. It's about ensuring these celestial voices aren't silenced. Across Australia's Arnhem Land, Yolngu elders are teaching children to read the stars not through telescopes, but through stories passed down over 65,000 years. Their celestial maps don't just chart stars, they track the seasons through the emu in the sky. Its shifting posture signaling when to harvest eggs or when rivers will run dry. This isn't folklore gathering dust in museums, it's living science. Researchers have discovered these traditions encode precise ecological knowledge, like the link between the Pleiades' brightness and impending monsoon rains, a correlation modern meteorology now confirms. Meanwhile, in New Zealand, the Maori revival of Matariki, the Pleiades, has transformed from a fading memory into a national holiday, with telescopes and traditional karakia chants used side by side to mark the new year. What makes these efforts revolutionary isn't just cultural preservation, it's the way they're reshaping modern astronomy. Take the work of the Indigenous Astronomy project in Australia, where astrophysicists collaborate with elders to decode star stories that may hold clues to ancient supernova or meteor impacts. One stunning example, the Wardaman people's description of a fire star in the Coalsack Nebula, aligns eerily with modern observations of a centuries-old stellar explosion. Similarly, Navajo star ceilings, constellations painted on cave walls, are being studied for their potential as prehistoric astronomical records, their alignments matching celestial events from 1,000 years ago. But the impact goes beyond academia. In Canada, Inuit elders teach polar navigation using stars invisible to most of the world, like Sirius, the first ones of the Arctic sky, whose positions guide hunters across shifting ice. These methods, refined over millennia, are now being integrated into climate research, offering insights into ice melt patterns that satellites miss. In Hawaii, the Imaloa Astronomy Center blends cutting-edge planetarium shows with chants about the demigod Maui lassoing the sun, a metaphor younger generations used to grasp solar physics. Supporting these initiatives isn't just about justice for marginalized knowledge systems, it's about expanding humanity's toolkit for understanding the universe. When a Maori astronomer explains how their ancestors used Matariki's helical rising to predict crop yields, or a Cherokee elder decodes petroglyphs that track lunar standstills, they're not sharing myths, they're offering time-tested data sets. Projects like the Smithsonian's Recovering Voices program are now racing to document these traditions before they're lost, pairing astrophysicists with tribal knowledge keepers to create hybrid star catalogs. The future of astronomy might just lie in this fusion of ancient and modern. Imagine space missions guided by Polynesian star compass principles, or Mars rovers named after indigenous celestial beings. As we stand on the brink of interplanetary exploration, these sky stories remind us that the universe speaks in countless dialects, and we're only beginning to listen. Today, the stars that guided Polynesian voyagers and inspired Maya astronomers are vanishing not from the cosmos, but from our view. Light pollution now obscures the Milky Way for nearly 80% of humanity, turning the celestial tapestry that once sparked myths and calendars into a washed-out haze. Cities glow so brightly that many children grow up never seeing the band of our galaxy, let alone the delicate dust lanes that form the emu in the sky or the celestial llamas of the Andes. But there's a movement pushing back. Dark sky preserves, from Chile's Atacama Desert to Namibia's Namibrand, are reclaiming the night, offering glimpses of the heavens as they appeared to ancient sky watchers. Standing under these pristine skies, you begin to understand why the Inca called the Milky Way Mayu, a river mirroring those that carved through their empire. or why the Navajo saw it as the backbone of the night. Technology, ironically, is helping bridge this disconnect. Apps like Stellarium don't just map stars, they overlay indigenous constellations alongside Western ones, revealing how the same patch of sky held entirely different meanings across cultures. Switch your view to the Aboriginal perspective, and Orion's sword becomes a group of hunters pursuing a kangaroo. Flip to the Inuit, and the Big Dipper transforms into a caribou antler. These tools do more than educate, they restore layers of meaning scrubbed away by modern light. Even NASA has begun incorporating indigenous star knowledge into its educational programs, recognizing that Polynesian navigation techniques or Tiswana rain predictions encoded in stellar patterns hold scientific value beyond their cultural beauty. Rediscovering these ancient sky stories does something profound. It humbles us. When you learn that the Dogon tracked Sirius B without telescopes, or that Babylonian priests predicted Jupiter's retrograde motion centuries before Kepler, it shatters the myth of linear progress. These weren't primitive guesses, they were triumphs of sustained observation, proving curiosity and ingenuity aren't modern inventions. That humility fuels scientific progress today. Researchers studying climate patterns now consult Maori oral histories about Mataraki's brightness correlating with crop yields, while astronomers use petroglyphs of supernova to pinpoint stellar explosions from 1,000 years ago. The past isn't a relic, it's a collaborator. To truly honor these traditions, we need to do more than just look up, we need to see as they did. Start by finding a dark sky, even if it's just a backyard away from streetlights. Let your eyes adjust for 30 minutes and suddenly, stars invisible at first glance emerge. Watch for the International Space Station tracing a steady arc, a modern wanderer that would have fascinated ancient astronomers. Use a red light flashlight to preserve night vision, just as Inca priests might have used dim torches to study the heavens, and most importantly, learn the stories. When you spot Scorpius, don't just see a scorpion, remember the Maoris' Te Waka o Tamariti, the great canoe sailing the celestial ocean. The stars haven't changed, we have. By rekindling these ancient relationships with the night sky, we don't just reclaim lost knowledge, we rediscover our place in a cosmos that's always been full of voices, if we're willing to listen. Standing under a sky unpolluted by city lights, you begin to see what your ancestors witnessed every clear night, a cosmos alive with meaning. Dark sky parks like Utah's Natural Bridges or Namibia's Namib Rand offer windows to this lost heritage, where the Milky Way stretches so vividly you can trace the dust lanes that form the emu in the sky or the llama of the Andes. But you don't need to travel far to start. Even suburban backyards can reveal wonders when you let your eyes adjust for 30 minutes, no telescopes, just patience. Try spotting Orion's belt, then picture how the Greeks saw a hunter there, while the Lakota saw the spine of a bison, and the Maori a canoe hook. These layers of story transform random stars into a celestial library. Tracking the moon's phases is another gateway to ancestral wisdom. The same waxing crescent that told Polynesians when to plant taro also guided Inca priests in timing sacrifices. Notice how the full moon's light casts shadows just as it did on Babylonian astronomers charting eclipses. For deeper immersion, align a personal ritual with the lunar cycle journal at the new moon, harvest herbs at the full. This isn't just stargazing, it's time travel, syncing your heartbeat with rhythms that once dictated empires' fates. The real magic happens when you pair observation with storytelling. Learn how the Dogon tracked Sirius B's orbit through oral traditions, or how Navajo constellations like the Coyote Star warned of seasonal shifts. Apps like Sky View can overlay these ancient patterns onto your night sky. revealing how cultures projected their worldviews onto the same stars we see today. Try sketching the Pleiades as the Cherokee's 7 dancing boys one night, then as Japan's Subaru cluster the next. Each version holds ecological wisdom: when to fish, when to sow, encoded in myth. Why does this matter? Because reconnecting with the old sky isn't about nostalgia. It's about reclaiming a lost language of belonging. When you stand under a starry sky without light pollution, you're not just seeing photons from distant suns. You're witnessing the same canvas that inspired Maya mathematicians, Babylonian priests, and Polynesian navigators. Their stories weren't just fanciful tales, they were survival tools, moral guides, and cosmic maps. In an age of satellite constellations and space debris, these perspectives remind us that the night sky was humanity's first classroom, its lessons written in light long before our cities drowned them out. The next time you step outside after dark, pause. Let your vision stretch beyond the few bright stars visible through urban glow. Imagine the generations before you who relied on those pinpricks of light to navigate oceans, plant crops, and ponder their place in the universe. By seeing the sky as they did, not as a void to conquer, but as a story to join, you're not just observing history, you're keeping it alive. From the flickering campfires of our ancestors to the glowing screens of modern planetarium shows, the stars have always been more than distant specks of light. They're mirrors reflecting humanity's deepest questions. Consider this: when a child points at Orion's belt today, they're echoing the same gesture made by Babylonian priests and Navajo elders, separated by millennia but united by wonder. These celestial stories endure because they do something extraordinary. They collapse time, connecting us to every generation that ever tilted its face skyward and saw not just stars but stories. Look at how these ancient narratives still shape our world. The Hubble Space Telescope's images of nebulae bear names like the Pillars of Creation, a phrase that could have been lifted straight from Maori creation myths. Sci-fi blockbusters recycle age-old themes: star-crossed lovers, cosmic battles between light and dark, proving that even with our advanced technology, we still frame the unknown through the language of myth. And when astronauts describe the overview effect, that profound shift in perspective from seeing Earth against the cosmic dark, they're experiencing what Polynesian navigators felt when they realized islands were connected by star paths, a humbling sense of being part of something vast. But here's what's truly remarkable: these stories aren't just relics, they're living bridges between disciplines. Modern astronomers use Aboriginal, emu dreaming stories to locate dark matter clouds in the Milky Way. Climate scientists study Inuit star lore to understand historical weather patterns encoded in oral traditions. Even the search for extraterrestrial life draws on the Dogon's intricate knowledge of Sirius, proving that ancient sky watchers weren't just storytellers, they were the first interdisciplinary scientists. Yet this shared celestial heritage faces urgent ethical questions. Who owns the stars? When corporations trademark constellation names or satellite constellations obscure ancestral sky maps, we're not just losing dark skies, we're erasing cultural memory. The fight to protect Chile's Atacama Desert from light pollution isn't just about astronomy. It's about preserving the cosmic narratives of the Atacamino people, whose llama-shaped dark constellations have guided their rituals for centuries. The ethical dilemma cuts deeper. Museums display Babylonian star tablets as artifacts, but should these celestial records be repatriated as living knowledge? When universities study Polynesian navigation techniques, are they giving proper credit to the communities who safeguarded this wisdom through oral tradition? The stars belong to no one, but the stories we've built around them are sacred inheritances, ones we must handle with care. Perhaps that's the real lesson written in the night sky. These enduring stories remind us that astronomy was never just about mapping the heavens. It was about charting our place in the cosmos. Whether carved on temple walls or projected in digital domes, celestial myths whisper the same truth: we're all stardust trying to understand itself. And that realization might be the most timeless story of all. For the Hopi people, the Pleiades aren't just a cluster of stars. They're the Chuhukan ancestral spirits who return each winter to signal the time for sacred ceremonies. When this constellation appears, it marks the start of the Pawamu festival, a time of purification and renewal where children receive symbolic bean sprouts to ensure community prosperity. This isn't folklore to them, it's a living covenant between the people and the cosmos. Yet in recent years, companies have trademarked the name Pleiades for everything from skincare brands to car models, stripping these stars of their cultural weight. The same happens with the Maori's Matariki, now co-opted by tourist agencies selling stargazing experiences without tribal consent. Respecting sacred skies means more than avoiding offense. It's recognizing that some celestial stories aren't just tales, but the spiritual backbone of entire cultures. This tension between tradition and commercialization isn't new. In the 1800s, settlers dismissed Navajo star lore as superstition, even as their own astronomers relied on indigenous knowledge to navigate the West. Today, the stakes are higher. Satellite megaconstellations like SpaceX's Starlink risk obscuring the very stars these traditions depend on. Their artificial trails photobombing rituals timed to celestial events. Organizations like the International Dark Sky Association now work with tribes to designate dark sky sanctuaries, protecting not just ecosystems but cultural heritage. Take Hawaii, where telescopes on Mauna Kea sparked protests not against science, but against the desecration of a summit considered the Pico, or umbilical cord, connecting Earth to heaven. Compromise came when astronomers agreed to include native Hawaiian stargazing practices in outreach programs, blending cutting-edge research with ancestral wisdom. Ethical engagement goes beyond preservation, it's about active stewardship. The Cherokee Nation recently partnered with NASA to name a Martian rock sample, Iwai Usdi, or Little Deer, weaving their language into space exploration. In Australia, the Wardaman people collaborated with astrophysicists to study their fire star stories, revealing they likely documented a supernova visible 600 years ago. These partnerships show how indigenous knowledge can enrich modern astronomy when handled with care. Now consider how deeply astronomy intertwines with faith. The same stars that guided Polynesian navigators also shaped the world's spiritual traditions. In Hinduism, the nakshatra's lunar mansions dictate rituals from weddings to funerals, their positions calculated with mathematical precision. Islamic astronomy gave us the astrolabe, a device perfected to determine prayer times from star positions. Even the Bible's Star of Bethlehem has been analyzed through planetary conjunctions, with scholars debating whether it was Jupiter meeting Saturn or a rare triple alignment with Venus. These celestial connections reveal a universal truth. Whether as gods, guides, or divine messengers, the stars have always been humanity's spiritual compass. From the incense-filled halls of Buddhist temples aligned to solstice sunrises to the psalmist's declaration that the heavens declare the glory of God, astronomy and religion share a bond as old as civilization itself. The challenge and opportunity lies in honoring these diverse celestial traditions without reducing them to curiosities, ensuring the night sky remains not just a spectacle, but a sacred text written in light. In the pre-dawn stillness of Varanasi, Hindu priests raise their hands toward the rising sun, offering arghya water cupped in reverence to Surya, the sun god whose chariot wheels are said to crest the horizon each morning. This daily puja ritual isn't just poetry. It's a sacred dialogue with the cosmos, where every ray of light carries divine energy. Across India, temples like Konark's sun chariot are engineered as astronomical instruments, their stone wheels casting shadows that mark solstices with uncanny precision. The Vedas describe the sun as the soul of all that moves and doesn't move, a cosmic witness to human devotion for over 3 millennia. Shift your gaze to Mecca, where millions of Muslims orient their prayers using the Qibla, a direction originally calculated by tracking stars like Polaris before modern compasses existed. Early Islamic astronomers like al-Battani refined these celestial alignments, blending faith with mathematics to ensure every mosque faced the Kaaba, even from distant lands. The night sky wasn't just a navigation tool, it was a bridge to the divine, with constellations mentioned in the Quran like Al-Jawza, Orion, serving as celestial signposts. In Cairo, the Ibn Chalan Mosque's minaret still bears ancient markings used to cite the crescent moon, signaling Ramadan's start, a tradition linking earthly worship to celestial cycles. Then there's the Star of Bethlehem, a celestial mystery that's puzzled scholars for centuries. Was it a supernova, as Chinese astronomers recorded around 5 BCE? A rare conjunction of Jupiter and Venus which would have blazed like a single beacon, or perhaps Halley's comet, whose appearance in 12 BCE might have been remembered and retold. Whatever its astronomical identity, the star's legacy endures in Christmas traditions worldwide, from tree toppers to carols celebrating the heavenly light. It's a reminder that for countless generations, the heavens weren't just observed, they were listened to, their patterns interpreted as divine whispers. Now imagine a Navajo grandmother pointing out Dilie, hey, the Pleiades, to her granddaughter, explaining how these stars guide the planting of corn, or a Maori elder teaching children to spot Mataraki's first rising, signaling the new year. For millennia, kids haven't just heard these stories, they've been the keepers of them, memorizing star paths through games and songs. In ancient Greece, young boys learned Orion's myths while navigating by his belt. Polynesian toddlers practiced star compass chants before they could walk. This wasn't casual stargazing, it was cultural survival, ensuring the next generation could read the sky's language long before they'd ever need to sail by it. What's beautiful is how these traditions spark wonder in ways textbooks can't. When a Lakota child hears how fallen star placed the Big Dipper in the sky to remind people of generosity, or a Japanese schoolgirl counts the 7 sisters of Subaru, the Pleiades, through a paper telescope, they're not just learning astronomy, they're inheriting a worldview. Modern planetarium shows pale next to the thrill of spotting Sirius for the first time and knowing the Dogon call it Sigi Tolo, home to the Namo spirits. These stories turn the cosmos into a playground where every constellation is a classroom and every shooting star a chance to dream. From the hymns of Vedic priests to bedtime stories about the moon rabbit in China, celestial tales have always been the first science lessons and the first spiritual guides. They teach kids that the universe isn't cold and empty, but alive with meaning, waiting for them to add their own chapter to the oldest story humanity knows. Gazing up at a planetarium dome, a child's eyes widen as the projector swirls to life, painting Greek heroes and Navajo coyotes across a synthetic sky. Books like Star Tales and The Kid's Guide to the Constellations do more than retell myths, they transform cold points of light into characters with backstories, turning Orion from a star pattern into a hunter eternally chasing the Pleiades sisters, or the Big Dipper into a celestial bear pursued by 3 relentless hunters. These aren't just bedtime stories, they're the first threads in a lifelong tapestry of cosmic curiosity. Museums and observatories have caught on, too. At Chicago's Adler Planetarium, kids use replica Babylonian tablets to predict eclipses just as ancient scribes did, while the Griffith Observatory's family nights let them navigate by Polynesian star compasses, trading screens for the thrill of finding Jupiter with nothing but a handmade star map and their own widening eyes. What's revolutionary about these tools isn't just their accessibility, it's how they honor the why behind ancient astronomy. A child learning that the Maya timed corn planting to the Pleiades rising isn't just memorizing a fact, they're grasping the visceral connection between sky and survival. When they build a shoebox sundial and mark its shadow shifts like an Egyptian priest, they're not playing pretend. They're retracing the steps that turned observation into science. Even simple activities like charting the moon's phases with Oreo cookies echo the Inca's lunar calendars carved into temple walls. The magic lies in the realization that those ancient skywatchers weren't so different from them, just people armed with curiosity, looking up and daring to ask, what does it all mean? Yet for all these creative approaches, one mystery captivates young minds above all others: the Dogon's knowledge of Sirius B. How did a culture without telescopes describe a star invisible to the naked eye? Books like The Mystery of the Dogon Stars present it as a cosmic detective story, letting kids weigh the evidence ancestral observation versus potential outside contact without spoon-feeding answers. Planetarium shows take it further, using immersive visuals to let them stand on a virtual African cliff, comparing the star's actual orbit to Dogon oral traditions. The debate isn't just academic, it teaches a critical lesson that some questions don't have neat answers, and that mystery itself is a gateway to deeper exploration. This blend of myth and science does something profound. It rescues ancient astronomy from dusty textbooks and returns it to its roots, a communal, wonder-filled dialogue between generations. When a Navajo elder points out the celestial maiden to a child during a camping trip, or a Greek grandmother recounts how Artemis placed Orion in the sky, they're not just passing down stories. They're handing over a millennia-old baton, reminding the next generation that the night sky isn't just a spectacle to stream, but a story they're part of, one that began when the first human looked up and felt the irresistible pull to connect the dots. And that brings us full circle to the most enduring question of all, one that has haunted every culture, from Babylonian astrologers to modern astrophysicists. Are we alone in the universe? The same stars that inspired myths about gods and heroes now guide our search for exoplanets, proving that humanity's celestial conversation is far from over. For millennia, the night sky hasn't just been a canvas of light, it's been a mirror of our deepest yearning to know if we share the universe with others. The Aboriginal Wandjina spirits painted on cave walls with star-filled halos weren't just deities, they were visitors from the clouds, bringers of rain and law. The Greeks told of Prometheus, a titan who stole fire from the heavens, a metaphor that feels eerily prescient now, as we search for cosmic neighbors who might have harnessed starlight long before us. Even the Dogon's Nommo, amphibious beings who descended from Sirius, blur the line between myth and modern speculation about aquatic extraterrestrials. These stories weren't mere fantasy, they were humanity's first thought experiments about life beyond Earth, woven into cultural DNA. Fast forward to today, and the question hasn't changed, only our tools have. SETI radio telescopes scan the same stars the Maya tracked, listening for patterns in the cosmic static. The Breakthrough Listen project analyzes millions of frequencies, a high-tech echo of Polynesian navigators discerning land from subtle star glimmers. Yet the most profound shift isn't technological, it's philosophical. Ancient cultures assumed celestial beings existed, we're now testing that assumption with math and physics. The Drake equation, which estimates the number of detectable civilizations, is really just a scientific reformulation of the same awe that inspired Navajo star heroes or Hindu Vimana's flying palaces described in Sanskrit texts with uncanny resemblance to spacecraft. What's striking is how these ancient narratives anticipated modern dilemmas. The Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh warns against the gods' jealousy when humans seek immortality, a theme that resurfaces in debates about messaging extraterrestrials. Should we broadcast our presence, or might advanced civilizations view us as threats, like the Norse Aesir freezing giants they feared? The Tlingit people of Alaska tell of ravens stealing light from a distant cosmic house, a parable that now feels allegorical for our hunt for exoplanets in distant Goldilocks zones. Here's where you enter the story. Citizen science projects like SETI at home let anyone's computer help sift radio signals for alien transmissions, a digital version of Inca priests watching for celestial omens. Apps like Night Sky allow you to map constellations while overlaying indigenous star lore, turning your backyard into a cross-cultural observatory. Even stargazing itself becomes activism when you join dark sky initiatives, preserving the same pristine heavens that let ancient astronomers spot the guest stars we now call supernova. The truth is, the search for cosmic kin has always been a collective effort from Babylonian scribes recording planetary motions to today's crowdsourced asteroid tracking. When you look up tonight, remember, you're not just stargazing. You're continuing the oldest conversation in human history, one that began when the first storyteller pointed to the sky and whispered, "What if we're not the only ones wondering?" Long before telescopes and satellites, ordinary people, farmers, shepherds, sailors were the world's first astronomers, tracking celestial patterns that shaped their daily lives. Today, that tradition lives on through citizen science, where anyone with a smartphone can contribute to real astronomical discoveries. Apps like Zooniverse turn your screen into a digital observatory, letting you classify distant galaxies from Hubble images or flag asteroids in telescope data, tasks that even the most advanced algorithms struggle to do alone. It's a modern echo of how Babylonian priests recorded Venus's movements on clay tablets, or Polynesian navigators memorized star paths without writing them down. What's revolutionary isn't just the technology, it's how these platforms democratize discovery. When a teacher in Brazil spots a supernova through the Backyard Worlds project, or a retiree in Canada helps identify a comet tail structure with NASA, a sungrazer initiative, they're participating in the same human impulse that drove ancient skywatchers, the thrill of uncovering something no one has seen before. Projects like the American Association of Variable Star Observers even train amateurs to monitor pulsating stars, continuing work started by astronomers like Al-Sufi in the 10th century. The tools have changed, but the wonder remains. This global collaboration also resurrects forgotten ways of seeing. Indigenous communities are partnering with apps like Starwalk 2 to overlay traditional constellations, like the Inuit Sivalik or the Maoris Te Waka o Tamariti alongside Western star maps. Suddenly, your phone becomes a bridge between cultures, revealing how the same patch of sky held entirely different meanings. In Australia, Aboriginal elders use the app to teach younger generations how the emu in the sky's posture predicts seasonal shifts, proving that ancient knowledge still has practical value in the digital age. But the real magic happens when these efforts lead to tangible breakthroughs. In 2017, amateur astronomers using the Zooniverse platform discovered a bizarre, yellow ball structure in the Milky Way, a previously unnoticed type of stellar nursery. Another group detected mysterious radio circles in space, now a hot topic in astrophysics. These aren't just feel-good stories, They're proof that collective observation, a practice as old as humanity itself, still drives science forward. Whether it's tracking light pollution through globe at night or logging meteor showers with the International Meteor Organization, every set of eyes on the sky adds to a legacy that began when the first humans traced shapes in the stars. As we stand beneath the same infinite canvas that inspired our ancestors, it's clear the cosmos doesn't belong to experts or institutions. It's a shared inheritance waiting for anyone brave enough to look up and wonder. And with each observation, whether etched on a cave wall or tapped into an app, we add another verse to humanity's oldest story. As the stars emerge tonight, they carry more than light. They bring forward whispers from every civilization that ever mapped their dreams across the darkness. Those ancient stories etched in constellations weren't just attempts to explain the unknown. They were the first equations of astronomers, the first brushstrokes of artists, and the first verses of poets grappling with infinity. When the Maya calculated Venus's orbit with breathtaking precision, or the Polynesians navigated oceans by star paths, they weren't practicing superstition. They were pioneering a science of connection, linking human lives to the cosmos in ways we're only beginning to appreciate. There's something humbling about realizing the stars we see tonight are the very same lights that guided pharaohs to build pyramids aligned with Orion, or inspired Norse skalds to sing of Valkyries riding the aurora. The sky hasn't changed, our understanding of it has. Yet in our rush to dissect the universe with telescopes and algorithms, we risk forgetting that science and wonder aren't opposites, they're partners. The Dogon's Sirius lore or the Aboriginal emu in the sky aren't quaint myths to outgrow. They're proof that observation and imagination have always danced together. Every culture's celestial stories were their way of saying, we belong to something vast, so tonight step outside. Let your eyes adjust to the dark and try to see the sky as they did, not as a void to conquer, but as a story still being written. Trace the Big Dipper and recall how the Lakota saw it as a bison's backbone, or find Scorpius and imagine the Maori's great canoe sailing the celestial ocean. These stories aren't relics, they're invitations. When you share them, whether teaching a child to spot the Pleiades or posting your favorite constellation tale in the comments, you're adding your voice to a conversation that began when the first human looked up and felt that primal stir of curiosity. This isn't just about nostalgia, it's about reclaiming the sky as a shared inheritance, one that transcends borders and generations. The same stars that inspired Ptolemy's star charts now guide NASA rovers on Mars, proving that the cosmos has always been our common classroom. So keep looking up, keep questioning, and keep passing those stories forward, because somewhere out there, another civilization might be gazing at their own night sky, weaving their own myths, and one day, our voices might join theirs in the grand cosmic dialogue. Until then, the stars remind us we're all part of the same ancient, endless story.